The sound of shattering porcelain and heavy wood hitting the floor is something you never really forget. But long before the plates broke, the quiet fractures in my home had already started. My name is Margaret. I am 65 years old, and I live in a 4-bedroom colonial house I bought with my late husband 30 years ago. It's not a mansion, but it's mine. Every floorboard, every piece of furniture, every quiet morning by the kitchen window belongs to me. That piece shifted in early October. My son, Leo, and his wife, Chloe, asked to move in for just a few months. Their apartment lease was up, and they wanted to save for a down payment. Leo stood on my porch, shuffling his feet the way he always did when he wanted something. Chloe stood beside him, clutching her designer purse, looking at my front door like she was inspecting a rental property. I agreed. He was my son, and the house had space. The very first morning, I walked downstairs to find my favorite reading chair, a green velvet armchair that had sat by the living room window for a decade, pushed into the dark corner of the hallway. In its place stood a tall, metallic floor lamp that looked like a dental tool. Chloe walked out of the kitchen, sipping coffee from my favorite mug. She didn't offer a greeting. Instead, she gestured to the corner. The living room feels so much more open now, doesn't it? That chair was really blocking the natural light. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't sigh. I set my newspaper on the counter, walked into the hallway, grabbed the heavy velvet chair by its wooden arms, and dragged it right back to the window. The legs scraped loudly against the hardwood. Chloe blinked, lowering the mug. I just thought it looked better. You don't have to look at it, I replied, sitting down and opening my paper. But I have to sit in it. That was the first test. It wouldn't be the last. By November, the subtle shifts turned into blatant oversteps. Chloe had a habit of treating my house like a staging ground for her lifestyle blog. She didn't just rearrange, she discarded. I came home from running errands on a Tuesday afternoon to find 2 full trash bags sitting by the back door. The pantry door was wide open. Inside, my shelves were entirely reorganized. My baking supplies, the spices my husband used to order from a specialty shop in the city, the heavy bags of flour gone, replaced by neatly labeled, clear acrylic bins containing kale chips, quinoa, and protein powders. Leo was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling on his phone. "Where is my food?" "Leo," I asked, dropping my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. He didn't even look up. Chloe did a pantry cleanse. She read that keeping processed carbs in the house creates toxic energy. She bought some organic stuff to replace it. I walked over to the trash bags and untied the plastic knots. Inside were my unopened bags of coffee, my vanilla extract, and my cinnamon. I dragged both bags back into the kitchen, setting them heavily on the floor. Chloe walked in, freezing when she saw the bags. "Margaret, we're trying to eat cleaner." I didn't argue about toxic energy or diets. Instead, I drove to the hardware store. I bought a heavy-duty combination lock and a solid metal clasp. When they went out for dinner that evening, I installed it directly onto the heavy wooden pantry door. I put all my items back inside, locked it, and left their acrylic bins stacked on the kitchen counter. When they returned, Chloe tugged at the handle. The heavy metal lock didn't budge. She spun around, face flushed. "My groceries stay exactly where I put them," I offered simply from the living room couch. "You can store your bins in the garage." She stared at the lock, realizing the kitchen was no longer hers to control. You learn a lot about people by how they handle boundaries. Some respect them. Others just look for a different way to cross the line. Chloe chose The latter. The second week of December arrived, and the temperature dropped. I usually spent my Saturday mornings dusting the framed family photos in the hallway. They were simple memories. Leo's graduation. My late husband holding a fish he caught in Maine. A few faded pictures of my own parents. I stepped out of my bedroom that morning and stopped dead. The hallway walls were completely bare. The brass hooks were still there, but the frames were gone. I walked downstairs slowly, the silence in the house feeling thick. I found the photos stacked haphazardly in a cardboard box near the laundry room. Leo was making toast in the kitchen. "Where did my pictures go?" I asked, my voice dangerously level. He scratched the back of his neck, looking everywhere but at me. "Chloe's parents are coming for Christmas dinner. She wanted the house to look a bit more modern, less cluttered. She's going to hang some abstract canvases she bought." "In my hallway?" "Mom, it's just for the holidays. She wants her family to be impressed by where we live." "She doesn't live here," I reminded him. "She is staying here." I didn't yell. I picked up the heavy cardboard box and carried it upstairs. I spent the next 30 minutes carefully hanging every single frame back on its designated hook. When I finished, the hallway looked exactly as it had for 20 years. Chloe came up the stairs a few hours later, carrying 2 large wrapped canvases. She stopped at the top step, staring at the family photos. Her jaw tightened. I stood in my doorway, holding a dust cloth. "If you ever touch my husband's photographs again," I stated calmly, "you will be packing your bags before the sun sets." She didn't say a word. She just turned around and carried her canvases back downstairs. But the resentment in her eyes promised a fight. As Christmas drew closer, the entitlement grew louder. Chloe had officially invited her parents, her sister, her sister's husband, and 3 of her friends to dinner. She didn't ask me. She informed me. On a Thursday evening, Leo approached me in the living room. He held a long, printed grocery list. He dropped it onto the coffee table in front of my book. "Mom, Chloe finished the menu for Christmas. Since there are going to be 12 of us, we need to start buying things early. The butcher needs a deposit for the prime rib by tomorrow." I picked up the paper. It was absurd. Truffle oil, imported cheeses, 3 bottles of a very specific, expensive red wine, and a massive prime rib roast. The estimated total at the bottom was close to $600. I set the paper back on the table and went back to reading. "Well," Leo pressed, "can you transfer the money to my account, or do you want to give me cash?" I turned the page of my book. "I'm not paying for this." Leo frowned, crossing his arms. "Mom, come on. We're hosting. It's tradition to have a big dinner." "My tradition is a turkey and roasted potatoes," I replied without looking up. "If Chloe wants to host a luxury dinner for her relatives, she can fund it. I will provide a turkey for the house. The rest is your responsibility. We're trying to save for a house. We can't drop hundreds of dollars on one dinner." "Then I suggest she revises her menu to match her budget." Leo threw his hands up in frustration. "You're embarrassing us. Her parents expect a nice evening." I finally closed my book and looked him in the eye. "My bank account is not a prop for your wife's ego. Figure it out." The next day, I bought a small, high-quality turkey just for the 3 of us. I put it in the chest freezer in the basement and locked the lid. Christmas Eve was a masterclass in passive aggression. Chloe spent the entire day marching through the house, issuing orders to Leo, and treating me like an invisible nuisance. She rearranged the living room, hid my knitted throw blankets in a closet, and covered the dining table with an elaborate, towering centerpiece made of frosted glass and pine cones. I stayed out of the way, preferring the quiet of my bedroom. But around 6 o'clock, I came downstairs for a glass of water. The dining room was fully set. Fine china, which she had bought and shipped here without asking, gleamed under the chandelier. But it wasn't the plates that caught my attention. It was the seating arrangement. My heavy oak chair, the one that always sat at the head of the table near the kitchen door, was gone. In the far corner of the dining room, pressed almost against the radiator, was a small, flimsy card table. A single folding chair was placed behind it, set with a mismatched plate and a paper napkin. Chloe walked in carrying a stack of cloth napkins. She saw me looking at the folding table. "Since there are so many of us," she said breezily, not making eye contact. "The main table is completely full. I set up a cozy spot for you over there. It'll be easier for you to get in and out of the kitchen anyway, in case we need refills on the appetizers." She wanted me out of sight. She wanted me serving them. I didn't argue. I simply walked over to the card table, folded the metal legs with a sharp snap, and leaned it against the wall. Then, I walked to the garage, retrieved my heavy oak chair, carried it back into the dining room, and placed it firmly at the head of the main table, pushing her elaborate centerpiece aside to make room for my setting. Chloe's face went pale. Before she could speak, I turned to her. "I eat at my table." Christmas Day felt less like a holiday and more like an invasion. Chloe's family arrived at 2 p.m. sharp. They were loud, carrying stacks of gifts, and completely ignored the fact that they were walking into a stranger's home. Chloe's mother, a woman dripping in gold jewelry and strong perfume, handed me her heavy winter coat the moment I opened the door. "Be a dear and hang this up. Carefully. It's cashmere." I let the coat drop from my hands onto the hallway bench. "The closet is to your left," I pointed out smoothly, turning my back on her to walk into the kitchen. The afternoon dragged on. They drank the cheap wine Leo was forced to buy. They loudly complained about the lack of prime rib, making pointed comments about how some hosts don't know how to celebrate properly. Chloe played the role of the exhausted, perfect homeowner, nodding sympathetically while pouring more wine. I sat in my armchair by the window, sipping plain tea, watching the circus unfold in my living room. Leo looked miserable, running back and forth to the kitchen to fetch ice and crackers for his in-laws. He shot me pleading looks, hoping I would step in and help serve. I ignored him. By 6 p.m., the turkey I had roasted was done. The smell of butter and herbs filled the house, cutting through the heavy scent of Chloe's expensive candles. I carved the meat, placed it on a platter, and carried it into the dining room. The guests were already seated. Chloe had placed herself at the opposite end of the table, her parents flanking her. My oak chair remained exactly where I had put it yesterday. I set the turkey down. The room grew quiet as the guests looked at the simple meal. Clearly disappointed it wasn't the extravagant feast they were promised. I sat down in my chair and unfolded my napkin. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Dinner was a series of veiled insults. Chloe's sister complained that the potatoes lacked truffle oil. Her father loudly wondered why the house felt so dated. Through it all, I ate my dinner in silence, chewing slowly, letting their rudeness hang in the air. Then came the centerpiece issue. Chloe's towering glass and pinecone creation was blocking my view of my own son. I reached forward and pushed the heavy glass bowl to the side. It scraped loudly across the wood. Chloe slammed her fork down. "Margaret, please don't touch the decor. It ruins the aesthetic of the table." "It's blocking the food," I stated plainly. "Well, If you were sitting where I originally placed you, it wouldn't be an issue, she snapped, the wine clearly loosening her filter. Her mother gasped softly in agreement. I wiped my mouth with my napkin and looked directly at Chloe. I am sitting in my chair, at my table, in my house. You are a guest here. All of you. The table went dead silent. Chloe's father puffed his chest out. Now see here. There's no need to be rude. Chloe worked very hard to host us today. I didn't look at him. I looked at Leo, who was staring at his plate, sweating. Tell your wife, I instructed him calmly, to remember whose roof she is sleeping under. Leo finally looked up. His face was flushed, caught between his demanding wife and his mother. Instead of diffusing the situation, he chose the worst possible path. He tried to assert dominance to impress his in-laws. He dropped his napkin, his voice tight and angry. Mom, stop it. You're ruining the night for everyone. You've been difficult all month, hoarding food, locking cabinets, embarrassing us. Just stop. I sat perfectly still. I am not the one who needs to stop. Leo. He leaned forward, slamming his hand on the wood. Yes, you are. Because tonight isn't about you. This is not your Christmas. This is not your Christmas. The words echoed in the small dining room. For a few seconds, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. My brain processed the sentence slowly. Not my Christmas. In the house, I paid off. At the table, I bought. Chloe smirked, taking a slow sip of her wine. Her mother leaned back, looking satisfied. They thought they had won. They thought I would lower my head, accept the disrespect, and retreat to my bedroom like a scolded child. I looked at the plates, the half-eaten turkey, the ridiculous glass centerpiece. I looked at the son I raised, who was now sitting back in his chair, looking proud of himself for finally snapping at me. I stood up. I didn't say a word. I simply placed my hands under the thick, heavy edge of the solid oak table. I planted my feet firmly on the hardwood floor, and I pushed upwards with everything I had. The table tipped violently. For a split second, physics seemed to freeze. Then gravity took over. The crash was deafening. Plates shattered into 1,000 pieces. Wine glasses exploded, sending dark red liquid splashing across Chloe's cream-colored dress and her mother's cashmere sweater. The roasted turkey slid off its platter, hitting the floor with a wet, heavy thud. The giant glass centerpiece shattered against the wall. The heavy table slammed upside down onto the floor, the legs scraping fiercely against the wood before coming to a dead stop. The silence that followed was absolute. Nobody breathed. Chloe's mouth was open in a silent scream. Her father was frozen with his hands hovering over where his plate used to be. Leo looked like he had seen a ghost. I stood at the head of the ruined room, my hands resting at my sides. My breathing was perfectly steady. You're right, I said quietly, the words slicing through the silence. It's not. Chaos erupted. Chloe's mother shrieked, frantically dabbing at the wine stains on her sweater. Her father leaped up, his face purple with rage, shouting something about insanity. Chloe pushed her chair back violently. Are you crazy? You ruined my dress. You ruined everything. I didn't flinch. I walked out of the dining room, went into the kitchen, and pulled a roll of heavy black trash bags from under the sink. I walked back into the dining room and tossed the roll onto the floor next to the overturned table. Dinner is over, I announced. Leo finally found his voice, stammering, standing up with his hands raised. Mom! Mom! What did you just do? You need to calm down. I am perfectly calm, I replied, pointing to the hallway. You and your guests have exactly 10 minutes to leave my house. Chloe's sister grabbed her purse. We are leaving. This woman is unhinged. Good, I agreed. Don't forget your coats. Chloe's family didn't wait. They practically ran to the hallway, grabbing their belongings. The front door slammed open, letting in a blast of freezing winter air, and then slammed shut. Only Leo and Chloe remained, standing amidst the shattered plates and spilled wine. Chloe was shaking with anger. We live here, she yelled. You can't just throw us out into the snow. I walked past her, headed for the stairs. I am not throwing you into the snow. I am telling you to go to a hotel. Your bags need to be packed by the time I come back down. If they aren't, I will pack them for you and leave them on the porch. Leo chased after me to the bottom of the stairs. Mom, be reasonable. We don't have the money for a hotel right now. I paused on the third step, looking down at him. Then you shouldn't have bought the truffle oil. They left 45 minutes later. Leo carried 2 heavy suitcases to his car in silence. Chloe refused to look at me, her face pale and tight as she stomped out the front door. They didn't apologize. I didn't expect them to. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning the dining room. I swept up the shattered china, scrubbed the wine stains out of the hardwood, and managed to flip the heavy oak table back onto its legs. It had a new scratch down the center, but it was sturdy. It wasn't going anywhere. The house was incredibly quiet. There was no loud complaining, no moving of furniture, no unwanted guests treating me like a ghost in my own home. I locked the front door, turned off the porch light, and made myself a fresh cup of tea. 3 days later, Leo called. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, he started, his voice completely drained of the arrogance he had on Christmas. We're staying at a Motel 6. It's expensive. Chloe wants to know if we can come back. Just until January, I stood in my kitchen, looking out the window at the snow covering the backyard. No, I said simply. Mom, please. We learned our lesson. We won't touch your stuff. You learned that my boundaries are real, I corrected him. You are an adult. Leo, you and your wife need to find your own way. You can visit when you remember how to be a guest, but you do not live here anymore. I hung up the phone before he could argue. I walked into the dining room. The table sat in its rightful place. The house smelled like fresh coffee and quiet mornings. I sat down in my heavy oak chair, pulled my book toward me, and enjoyed the complete, beautiful silence of my home.